the second session. Our speaker is Dr. Atrish Milwala, Unicaf University, Zambia. Position Program Leader MBA, Management and BBA. Duration been here since January 2020. She has published many research papers in national and international journals. We are very glad to have you, ma'am. I'm hand over in this session to you. This session is yours.
Thank you so much. Without wasting so much time, I'll get to share my presentation so that we'll be able to speak from that angle. You could tell me if you're able to see it so that okay. Are you able to see my presentation?
Yes, ma'am, it's quite visible.
Yeah. Can see. Clearly.
Okay. I've been introduced, so I'll not take time. I don't speak as much as Professor Bala because I'll be overtaking my mentor if I go that route. I'll start first by bringing us to pace to understanding what classroom management is. I will not be reading, but I'll be explaining to us. And the two keys that are really standing out is where if I'm in a class, I have to come up with strategies and techniques on how best I need to deliver my lesson. And as such, for me to be able to do that, I need to set certain rules, procedures, and routines that I'll need to follow. And the students will need to also abide to, so that our classroom may be entertaining and may have less distractions. At the end of the day, our view is to make sure that the lesson that we intend to deliver to the students in the class is delivered with minimum distractions. And this can only happen when we have certain rules, procedures, and routines set. I've emphasized on this point because time and again we'll need to come back and make reference to it. And there are certain key components that may need to be considered if class management is to be a success. And these include clear expectations, meaning that as a teacher, I need to set clear expectations on what I need to get from the students, and the students also will need to expect certain things from me as a teacher. That aside, we need to also have a positive reinforcement and also consistent consequences for misbehavior. But then this can be possible in a normal classroom. But what happens in a physical classroom, we'll need to explore more and learn about now what happens in a virtual learning environment. We've seen Prof consistently referring to the fact that most of his delivery has been virtual. So this virtual classroom has to also be managed. If not managed, it will bring about certain aspects now of classroom management being flawed. So there are critical aspects that have to be taken into consideration. If, for example, student behavior. If, for example, we say at this point, we all keep our microphones on, it will mean, therefore, that certain aspects in terms of behavior, if we had set rules to say all microphones have to be kept on silent, it was going to mean that there were certain rules that were going to be broken. In terms of academic performance, at the end of the day, when you deliver a class like this one, which we are assuming is more like a class, we would expect that we get certain level of understanding after a delivery of a lesson has been given. And at the end of the day, the learning environment has to be that conducive so that the learners are able to deliver. When we say environment, if we are in a virtual class like this one, it means our internet connectivity, the gadgets that we're using, the environment that we are receiving that delivery from has to also be a conducive one. Several aspects. Some platforms that could include Moodle, Google Classroom, Blackboard are being used by different universities to have this delivered. And these became more eminent during the COVID pandemic at the time that it was heightened. We saw Prof constantly referring to the COVID situation before, the COVID situation after, and therefore our responses before and our responses after. And this led to us really getting so deep in understanding what a virtual learning environment is and how we can explore further to understand how we could proceed in learning without being disrupted by the challenges posed by certain pandemics such as the COVID. And therefore, it would be best for us to understand what a virtual learning environment is. Really, it's some kind of an educational setup which seeks to foster development of moral and ethical virtues in students, meaning that the learning process has to be continued without any disruptions. And there are certain aspects that the student has to take into consideration. We've seen most universities, for example, knowing that there's this technological aspect that has taken over the brick and mortar kind of learning, they've embedded into their system certain aspects to check whether the student is ethically upright, for lack of a better term. And we have seen certain aspects to do with Turnitin, meaning that the student will be checked to see if certain aspects in terms of plagiarism are being checked and the student is not cheating. By such, I mean that as we are moving from the normal classroom setup into the virtual learning environment, there are certain aspects that have to be kept in check. And these are now the moral and ethical dilemmas that we have to constantly deal with technologically so that we are able to deliver without any bridges that will make us not cross to the next side. As such, you and I will also agree that because of the fact that this learning environment is so open, we have aspects to do with the artificial intelligence. As universities, it is very difficult now to distinguish between the actual students' work and the student using an AI for them to give you an assignment that you ask them to do for you. And as a result, these learning environments really cause for a lot of research that has to be like invested in so as to come up with ways of detecting the fact that there's a lot of AIs, artificial intelligence systems now that students could use that would show to say the student may or may not be using actually their research, but using certain AIs for them to do the assignment that is posed. So research on VLE has shown some positive impact on students' moral development. Walker and Tapan, 2010, found that students who participate in VLE program demonstrate increased empathy and moral reasoning. The more you research, the more you read. It's different from those that some of us that are coming from the brick and mortar. You find that a student now and us then, comparatively, the student now has more exposure than us who were so limited to certain books. And if you don't afford to buy a certain book, then you'll not be able to access a certain information. But now things are online. You're able to check for a certain book. You're able to purchase a certain book. You're able to purchase or use or read a certain article just in the comfort of your gadget that you are using, be it a laptop and or a phone, or worse still, something that would take time to connect, but you still be able to get the book that you may need to get. Others use tablets. It depends on what gadget you are using. So similarly, Chang and colleagues in 2015 found that students who participated in a VLE program showed improved social emotional skills and greater pro-social behavior compared to those who did not participate in the program. Those were aspects that were showing us the research that was done in terms of the virtual learning environment. But the good thing is Prof brought us to the before COVID and the after COVID, which I didn't want to dig in so deep because the two aspects have already been tackled by Professor Bala. So the key aspects of VLE are that it is important to note that all VLE programs are created equal. VLE programs should be structured, intentional, and holistic in nature. This is according to Chang and et al. And others. So when you are exposed to VLE, you are exposed to the same information, the same detail, and it has to be structured in a particular way. I'll give an example of Utica University. We have preloaded courses that the student will be able to access. And you only access those courses that you've been registered for. Those courses that you have not been registered for will not be accessed by you. They will only be accessed to you as and when authority and or license or a keyword or the path is given to you to access. And therefore, this creates some good kind of distinguished strategy of delivery. And I've also been exposed to the learning environment in Austria, which is similar to the virtual learning environment that UNICAF uses, which is being used by the University of Zambia. You will find that the approach there is different. Whilst the UNICAF aspect has preloaded courses that one is able to access, on the other side, the lecturer will upload only that content that they want the student to access. So you find that different universities have different approaches to handling this aspect of the virtual learning environment. And I wouldn't want us to go without really checking, because in this aspect or in this space, if the lecturer and or the students are not being posed to a situation where they are constantly kept awake, it's very difficult for me to even understand or to see whether the students I'm talking to are actually listening. So I need to keep a certain rapport with my students so that we are able to connect, we are able to involve certain activities that will make the students be alive to the lesson that is being delivered. For example, I've used a lot of Zoom, and within Zoom, I'm able to create different rooms, which I'm able to go into the different rooms that I have created, give them each a whiteboard. If I pose a question, each room should be able to give me the desired results. And when I bring them back to the main Zoom for the presentation, the students will be able to present to me. So this is how easy it has been now to teach within the virtual learning environment. And towards the end of our lesson, I'll give you a little bit of an exposure of how this is done. And my call at this point is for you to reach out to your mobile phone so that you could experience what I'm talking about in terms of us being live to this virtual learning environment. So if your mobile phone is so far away, as I'm talking, you could ask whoever is near you to bring you close to your mobile phone so that when we reach that point, you will be able to be exposed to what I'm referring to. Okay. We did make reference to certain people that have done certain studies, and this gives a detailed approach in terms of what people have done and what still needs to be done. And seeing that we were challenged with the pandemic that literally covered everyone worldwide, it is best that we carry out certain research in this angle to really understand how the different programs, different environments in terms of the VLE. In this, I mean, how is a Zoom operating in terms of handling all classroom management issues? One, WIPAC. How is the Moodle being used by different universities in order to effect the virtual learning classroom management for its students and for its teachers, because it's a two-way aspect. If the teacher is not conversant, it means it will be very difficult for them to deliver the lesson. If the student is not conversant, likewise, it will be very difficult for them to even join the class. So the teachers, the studies that were done in the past were done pre-COVID. And post-COVID, we need to check, because we have already started using these systems. We need to check how these systems are now working to support the classroom management practices. And these highlighted are certain angles in terms of certain studies that were done and the findings that were presented after certain studies were done. I may not need to go in detail because Professor Bala did point at certain the pre and post aspect of COVID, and there he highlighted certain things that were happening before and the things that are happening now. So activities within the VLE, it is very important that a teacher incorporates certain activities within their lesson or their delivery in VLE. This is very important because the student will be able to relate and to remember certain things when they are presented through certain activities. Just like in the aspect of us learning the classroom management through the physical aspect, where we are being told to say you need to have demonstrations of certain areas of the things that you are trying to explain to your students on. Likewise, even in VLE, it is the same. You need to have discussions, you need to have role plays, you need to have certain angles that will make the student get involved. Like I mentioned earlier, within my Zoom, I'm able to go into different rooms. I'm able to create different rooms and go into different rooms and give them different tasks and ask them to present at the end of whatever time that I allocate them to do. This helps the student to understand and get some synced in kind of knowledge due to the role playing and getting involved in presentations and discussions here and there. So it is very important that even in VLE, you embed certain aspects that get the students involved and get certain exposure to real life. Research has shown that when teachers consistently enforce consequences for behavior, students are more likely to follow rules and inappropriate behavior. This one, I've decided to bring it up like this because in a virtual learning environment, this aspect is very difficult to monitor. But when you set certain rules right at the beginning of your lesson, for example, if we say we blur our backgrounds as if we allow the students to turn on their cameras, we make sure that all their microphones are off unless you allow them to. Certain things are visible. But if the cameras are off, for example, and you are not able to see the student, yes, you see the student log in, but you will not be sure whether the student is concentrating or not. So it will be very difficult for you to bring up this aspect. Although research has shown that consequences bring out certain angles of understanding in terms of one being punished for not doing this and that, it is very difficult in the virtual learning environment. And above this, there are certain disadvantages and advantages that we'll look at that affect the virtual learning environment. So certain advantages will also come in as advantages. This means that it depends on how you manage them. If you mismanage them, the same advantage will turn out to be a disadvantage. If you mismanage, or if you manage, it will give you the opposite. It's like one point falling on either side, depending on how you manage it. So technical issues. If there's internet, if the internet connectivity is bad, or the device compatibility is not okay, it means that the delivery of a class will be disrupted. Difficulty in maintaining student engagement and attention. This is an aspect that I just mentioned because of the fact that if I'm seated here and my camera is off, you will not be able to have that rapport or see how the student is being engaged. Unless the student is being talked to, you ask them to switch on their microphone or their cameras so that you're able to see and assess their attentiveness. Managing distractions may be very difficult. This one I've already highlighted: lack of physical interaction and nonverbal cues, especially when the cameras are off. It will be very difficult for you to see the nonverbal cues. Difficulty in enforcing rules and discipline, already highlighted. Maintaining student motivation and participation. This one, I think, falls on either side. Depending on how you manage your class, it will be very difficult for you to maintain that motivation and participation in your students. Providing adequate support for students with special needs. If I've got a special need, it will be very difficult for my teacher to meet that particular need because it's a virtual environment. Unless there's a particular way now that we may need to study this or carry out some research on how we can handle the special needs aspect so that we're able to come up with ways of handling this aspect. Maintaining effective communication and collaboration. This one also comes on either side. Ensuring equity and access to technology for all students. This also, it depends on how the student is. From my angle, if my students don't have a gadget that they could use for them to access the class, we are coming from this third world, so access to certain gadgets may be difficult. So if the student is not able to have that access through some technological access, then it will be very difficult for me to deliver that class to the student. Balancing teacher workload with technology and classroom management demands. Like I stated much earlier, we are coming from an environment where some of us were exposed to the brick and mortar. And being exposed to this virtual learning environment now, one has to be up to date in terms of understanding these technological aspects so that you're able to mix with the students that are exposed to this technology. More so, or over and above this, the workload also. You need to, for example, as a lecturer that will go in for a physical class face-to-face, I need to mark those physical papers and exams and or sheets. And I also need to concentrate on my virtual class. It means that I need to find a way of balancing the workload and the technology in terms of classroom management so that I don't get to be affected. Like I said, this aspect falls on two sides. It's both an advantage and or a disadvantage. So if we check on the advantage side, we'll see that there's increased flexibility and you schedule your own purse. Like I said, for example, our UNICAF delivery mode, you pace yourself in terms of what you should assimilate over a certain period of time. You're only told to say in 2 months, for example, you need to finish this course, and you pace your own studies, you pace your own assimilation of the course and the material that has been delivered to you through the virtual learning environment. So you find that within your flexi of time, the flexi of your time, you're able to do this, you're able to do that. You can work and still be able to attend to your school demands. You also have reduced distractions and behavioral issues. Yeah, like I said, there are certain aspects in the disadvantage that will also come as an advantage if you twist the coin. You also have enhanced collaborations and communication through technology. This aspect also, it depends on your exposure to it and the accessibility to the technology that calls for you to access that virtual learning environment. I may not need to go through all those because we're able to see them, but I'll ask us for now to reach out to our mobile phone and so that we have this activity, or else my preaching for us maintaining the rapport between us and the students in this virtual learning environment will not hold. So if you're with me, I'll copy this, or I'll keep it somewhere so that we are able to, you go to Google, you search Socrative student, and then you log on to the login chat as Mwelwa 2362. You sign in with your name. I will not expose your name here. I will hide your name. Then once you're there, I'll stop sharing and I'll come back to share so that I'm able to attend to the other. So I'll share. I'll share my screen for Socrative, and so that you're able to see what I mean when I say we have moved from the normal to the virtual. So 1 second, I'm trying to share. So, are you able to see my screen? It will help if you could answer, so because I'm not able to. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Come again?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Yes.
Yes, can.
Yes,
Okay.
we can see it.
Okay, so I'm coming here because I want you, remember I asked you to attempt, I asked you to keep your mobile phones close to you. And my hope is that you managed to log into the Mwelwa 2362 that I asked you to log on to. So when I launch, if you check, it will show me. So now it's showing me that none of you has logged in. It will show me the name for the students that have logged in, their responses for every question, and immediately it will show me the results. But if I click here, if one of you could try and log in to Mwelwa, the same way you are seeing it there, Mwelwa 2362, so that we're able to see how it's working, and you will be able to appreciate this learning environment that we have before us. If one of you could just try and log in, and I will demonstrate to you how it will show. Anybody? Because it will show me immediately when someone logs in, and you will be able to see this change immediately. And here it will show me, already it's showing me that 2 have logged in. And immediately, let me see. Okay, so if I say launch, and are you able to see the questions on the other side, those that have logged in? So you see, the name has been hidden. I'll not ask you. Okay, so it's showing me that someone has answered and the answer was correct. And if they attempt to, immediately it will show me that someone has attempted to, and it's in real time. So now it's showing me that 3 have logged in. I don't want to show the names here because if someone gets it wrong, you will start telling me to say I exposed someone. So I don't want to do that. And if I don't want to see the responses, I click there and the responses will not come. If I don't want it to show me the results, if you check, instead of it's showing me to say the answer is B, and as such, whoever puts B will get it correct because I've predetermined everything from this space. So this is what, so from this, I will be able to tell if the delivery of my class today was okay based on how people are going to respond to the questions that I will have posed to them, because these questions are based on what I've delivered today now. So I'll go back. I'll leave this space. I'll go to my library. I'll open my library so that you see what question 1 was asking us. So what does VLE stand for? Okay. And I've predetermined here to say VLE is that. So whoever put that will have gotten the answer correct on that space. Key components of successful classroom management include the following. I've put them, I've shuffled them, and the answer is this. So once this is done, if I go back here and I launch, the fact that I had disturbed everyone and now there's 4 of them, and I can choose to even generate a report. It will show me to say so many people got so many and I did it on this day. And so it will show me how many times I've delivered the quiz and what people have. I can go further to create different rooms within this same room that you are in. You could have different rooms, that room, and that room. And at the end of the day, you give your responses, and then we come back to the main room, and then we continue with our discussion. So I'll stop sharing this one so that we go back to our, okay, I'm trying to get to, okay. So I'll go back to our slides. So in short, or in conclusion, the virtual learning environment emphasizes positive behavior and character development, fostering a positive classroom culture and helping to prevent discipline problems. It can also help students to develop important life skills such as responsibility, empathy, and teamwork. And by creating an environment based on virtues, meaning that you need to have certain rules attached as you are delivering your class virtually, teachers can create a more supportive, productive, and an enjoyable learning experience for students. And these are the references for everything that I've delivered today. And if there are any questions, I can take them now. I'll
Good afternoon
stop,
from Ghana.
I'll stop sharing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Good afternoon from Ghana.
Okay.
My name
thank
is
you.
Ibrahim Haruna. Yes. I wanted to tell you that you could share my answer that I provided. I have answered all the 10 questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you can share it.
Okay, I'll check and then I'll share it. I'll share the results with you.
All right.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So very, very awesome presentation. I have learned other side of, I mean, virtual learning is a big deal. It's a big deal, and I have learned another aspect of virtual learning. Awesome presentation. Yes. If you look at your presentation, it boils down on, that is the central idea is on moral and ethical virtues in students. How we
Yes.
can be able to achieve moral and ethical virtues in students. Because with virtual learning, you have to be a very disciplined student, because nobody is forcing you to come online to come and study, but you have to be highly disciplined, right?
Yes.
Good.
And it's very difficult for us to distinguish between a disciplined student and a student who is not disciplined. So now it is up to us that are delivering to be able to come up with ways of at least capturing those aspects of those that students that are disciplined and those that are not, because there's a thin line.
All right. So in your presentation, under literature review, there were about 5 to 6 different literature reviews that
Yes.
were supporting your research work. Now, one of them said teachers who use positive reinforcement, such as rewards, they tend to get the attention of students. Assuming that there is no positive reinforcement, Doc, what will be the substitute for for positive reinforcement to encourage students to be disciplined morally, ethically on virtual learning?
Reinforcement is as good as saying excellent for a certain response that the student has given. And even you telling me to say the presentation went like this, that already, that one to me is some kind of a reward, because I'm saying, okay, yes, it may not come in terms of financial aspect and or an award given to me, a pen or a pencil for this, but it is you, the teacher now, to come up with aspects or ways of motivating that aspect in your students. And it could be as good as a note to the student to say this, or through the chat, okay, throughout this class. I'm here to pick a name, sorry, I don't want to mispronounce. Ibrahim,
Haruna
right?
Ibrahim. Yes.
Yes, Ibrahim was more participative in my class today. And as such, we put him on top of the class list to be the most participating student. Is that coming with any sort of financial or material aspect, or just you being on top for this particular session would give you that feel to say, even next time I need to put in a little more effort? Unless I've not really answered you in
Oh,
the sense.
I have comprehended with your answer. It's well explained.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah.